Hi, I'm Tyra G, your host of Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. Welcome again to our virtual global gathering of phenomenal women. And all of you who love them. They are mothers, daughters, grand and great-grandmothers, fearsome and generous, humble and honest, in pursuit of new possibilities and purpose. You know, here we dig deep and we come up strong. For first-time listeners, each month we explore a new theme inspired by you. Yes, I said you. We bravely walk into places where tradition has taught us there's some things that we just don't talk about. But not here. And no matter how hard judgment knocks, it cannot come in. Beloved, we live here beyond the wreckage. Every week we experience, educate, encourage, and empower each other. We share aha moments and stories that have been left in our pockets for too long. Every week we start where we are. I am so excited about how the show is progressing. We're celebrating the 5th month of proof that dreams can come true. Y'all know, Frankly Speaking with Tyra G is one of my most precious dreams. And I thank God for each and every one of you. Your gifts of ideas, your presence, your encouragement. They've all been gifts that inspired. Y'all know I can't do it without you, right? Thank you so very much. You're listening to Radio Fairfax, Virginia on your TV, computer, or mobile device. And we are webcast worldwide on the internet at www.radiofairfax.org every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Now, should you miss us, don't you worry. You can catch our podcast on YouTube, Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. And if you just feel like connecting with me offline, you all know I like that, right? It's easy. Email me at tyra@tyragarlington.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you, Courtney Nero, for composing and performing our Frankly Speaking theme song. And for naming it, I'm Listening. Our theme this month is Legacy is About Life and Living. Now, you know I like to create a common thought space. And today I want to share some thoughts that may not be in the forefront of your mind when you think of the term legacy. Susan Bosak of the Legacy Project suggests, legacy is about living and life. It's about learning from the past, living in the present, and building for the future. Legacy may take many forms: children, grandchildren, a business, an ideal, a book, a community, a home, some piece of ourselves. Our legacy naturally intrigues us. It's perfectly understandable that we want to know, how's the world going to remember me? How many of us will be surprised? How many of us are living our lives so that our legacy reflects all that we truly hold most dear? How many of us are living with integrity and courage? Leaving a legacy is a human need. It's part selfish. We want to feel immortal. The idea of leaving something behind that will live forever is kind of appealing. We also want to feel like we matter in the vast sea of humanity. By connecting with those at the beginning of their lives, we do complete a full circle of life's journey, and we leave some of ourselves, our experiences, our ideas, our values, and personal example in the minds and hearts of others. But you know, living a legacy has an altruistic component. If we don't leave a positive legacy, what kind of society are we building? What kind of world are we leaving behind? What are we passing on to our children and our grandchildren? You know, the world isn't connected by molecules. It's connected by stories and traditions and memories and hopes and dreams. We're connected by the legacies passed down from those who came before us and the legacies we pass down to those who come after us. I love this definition. Listen carefully. Legacy is an interconnection across time with a need for those who have come before us and a responsibility to those who come after us. For children, legacy means learning from the past. It separates the timeless from the transient. For adults, Legacy means hoping for the future. It means developing and passing on a timeless part of yourself. For both young and old, the power of legacy enables us to live fully present. You understand that you're part of a larger community, a community that must remember its history to build its future. There's caring combined with conscience. There's also wisdom to be found in each other, linking action and reflection to deal with complex problems. I'm going to leave you again with the definition. Legacy is an interconnection across time, with a need for those who have come before us and a responsibility to those who've come after us. Today I have a guest who is sharing a new perspective on legacy. It's called the Human Library. I got to tell you something. I'm going to put a comma there for a second. I was raised as a Christian, and I was told often as a little person and as a young adult, you may be the only Bible that some people read. And as I've grown into who I am today, I realize every single one of us has a story. Every single one of us is a story. And guess what? As we grow and live, we become books. We become books. Has anybody read you lately? The fun thing about our topic today, it's about human beings as books. It's a place, the Human Library is a place where difficult questions are expected and appreciated and answered. It's designed to build a positive framework for conversations that can challenge stereotypes and prejudices through dialogue. It helps us breathe life into words. You can't judge a book by its cover. Now, close your eyes for a minute. Think of the old-fashioned library, not the online library. You walk through the doors, you look about. Yes, there are lots of CDs and all these other things, but you see books. Books. Now, imagine walking into a community or an environment where you see talking books dressed like human beings. After a break, we're going to have our guest describe to you this very unusual and wonderful project. So you grab a snack, but hurry back, okay? And we are back. I'm sitting across from one special lady, and prior to the show, I found out she's more special than I knew. Please meet Patricia Cooper, and as I always do, have our guests introduce themselves in their own words.
All right. Hello. Thank you for bringing me to your show today.
It's my joy.
So I was thinking about how you wanted me to give an introduction, and since we're talking about stories, the Human Library book, and everybody having a story, I thought maybe I would start off as if I were a book.
I love
the
it.
Human Library Project.
I love it.
So here we go. So first of all, my name is Patricia Cooper, and I am a news junkie. And my story is pretty typical. It's a story of a mother who puts her career on hold in order to raise her children. But of course, it didn't end there. It grows and it grows. So I went to Howard University, and I studied broadcast journalism, and I worked as a broadcast journalist for many years in Washington, D.C. I started out in radio, working in WTOP News Radio, and eventually I ended up at CNN as an associate producer on the weekend talk shows. So I told Tyra that I'm not used to being on camera or behind the mic. I'm used to being behind the scenes. So that's where my training is. But I ended up having to take a break from my career to raise my two daughters. I have two beautiful daughters. They are beautiful young ladies right now. So actually I'm entering another phase of my life where my husband and I are empty nesters.
Uh-oh.
So
That's good and bad.
oh yeah, it's been good. It's been good. But yeah. Anyway, I gave up my career. I thought I was only taking a break. I thought I would get back to it eventually. But you know, the news business is hard. It's hard on families because the news never stops. And eventually, I thought I'd go back, but I used to work overnights and weekends,
yes, that's
and
hard.
nights, and I just didn't want to do that again. I just didn't want to do that.
Yes.
So we started our own publication for a little while. It was called "This Is My Child," and it was a publication giving parenting advice to the African American community, and I loved it. It was great. But again, you know how new businesses go. They start, they do well, but it wasn't bringing enough income, and I had 2 babies I needed to feed. So I one day, you know, as a stay-at-home mom for a little while, I got to spend time at the school, at my daughter's school,
Yes.
and I hung out there and volunteered, and I just discovered some things. I discovered that there were children who could not read. My oldest daughter was in the 5th grade, and some of her classmates were reading at the 1st and 2nd grade level.
Yes, yes.
And I was really shocked at that. I did not know that problem existed.
Okay.
And until I started volunteering in the school. So eventually, the principal asked me to come and join the staff, and because of my media background, she put me in the media center. And that was good and all, you know, but I wasn't a librarian type. I'm a very creative person, and you know, just you know, I love books, I love to read, but that just wasn't for me.
Yes.
And that was at the time when technology was coming on the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and we got our first computers at the school, and they were in the media center. So I jumped on board technology, and I just wanted to teach students and kids how to use technology. So that's how I ended up getting in the field of technology. And that's where I am now at Northern Virginia Community College. I'm a technology resource person, and I help teachers and students learn how to use different technologies, how to use different apps, and how to integrate technology into their curriculum. So that's where I am now. I'm at Nova and doing that. But because of our department, we get to be creative, and we get to participate in different projects. So that's sort of how I got involved with the Human Library Project.
And before you begin there, for our international listeners and national listeners, we need to let them know that Northern Virginia Community College is one of the largest community colleges in the country.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And it has one of the largest English as a second language program in the country.
Yes.
And I know this because I got to work on a proposal when we had the Olympics in China that Northern Virginia Community College would provide the English as the translation in English as a we didn't win the contract, but the college is known well enough to draw that kind of attention. So what Patricia's talking about is a thriving educational environment. So it's the perfect breeding ground for a new idea. And I want to also say I first met Patricia on a day that the Human Library Project was live.
Yes.
I had no idea what to expect. And she's going to take you in just a moment through a day when the Library Project is breathing with books walking around. But in fact, let's do that now. Let's talk about it. Is that all right?
That's fine. And I just wanted to come back to the fact that NOVA does have over 200 countries represented.
Yes.
Right on the Alexandria campus, which is where I work.
Yes.
We have over 200 countries represented. And I just find that fantastic. I just find it amazing.
It is.
I could be in the hallway talking to someone in English, and then someone can be standing next to me talking in their native tongue.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just amazing to me that we have this bounty and this wealth of culture right there. And so the way the human library works is people volunteered to be human books, meaning they volunteered to tell a part of their story, their life story. The overall theme of the Human Library book is talking with somebody in your community that has dealt with some type of prejudice or some type of discrimination, but doesn't have to just be that. And I was introduced to the project by a coworker who came across it, and she just shared it like an idea. And I said, "Oh no, we have to do this.
Yes.
This is something that we have to do with all these different cultures on this campus.
Yes.
We have to do this." And the first time we did it was last year during it came right before the presidential election.
Wow.
And as you all know and remember, last year's presidential campaign was very divisive.
Yes.
Very, very divisive. And so it was just a perfect time for us to sit down and get to meet the people in our community and hear their stories so that we could understand them and we can learn from them and we can tone down some of the rhetoric that was going on.
So okay. We know now that the books are human, and we know that it's an opportunity for communities to come together and connect
and have dialogue
and normalize some issues.
Right.
But does that happen one-on-one? Does that happen in a classroom?
Well, let me tell you how it happens.
Okay.
So the committee meets and we choose books. And last year we chose we had about 16 books, which is a nice size. And we had books from all kind of genres, if that's what you want, how you want to categorize them.
Yes.
So the way it works on that day, the books are all seated around and they're scheduled. They have a certain schedule to be like a 2-hour block of time.
Okay.
And so the students or anybody else that wants to come and check out a book,
I love it.
come
Yes.
and check out a book and have a conversation. You would come, and we had the books on a marquee. Like, you go to the library and you look through and you say, oh, this looks interesting, that looks interesting, and you decide what book you want to go and check out.
Yes.
So you'll go into the room and you will sit with your book and you would have a conversation for about 20 minutes about that person's story. And then a bell would ring and it would be time for you to get up and go and meet another book.
Yes.
So we did that all day for about 5 hours. People came and checked out different books, and some people left feeling like, oh, I want more. I feel like I left a cliffhanger because I didn't get to hear the whole story. I want more. And that was a great experience.
Now, I tiptoed in there.
Okay.
And I saw how it was set, the tables, you'd have a book on one side. But I also was able to go into an auditorium and a classroom where there was a book.
Well, we did something different this year.
Okay.
This year we had what we call bestsellers.
I love it.
And it wasn't that they were better than anybody. It was just that they were persons who might be better dealing with a larger audience.
Excellent.
So because our books are students, they're faculty, they're members of the community, and some people can't deal with a larger crowd. They are more intimate books, but we wanted to bring in bestsellers, and we had an amazing list of bestsellers this year.
And a huge turnout.
We had a huge turnout. I'm going to talk about two of the bestsellers that we had. We had a former Justice Department attorney who investigated the Martin Luther King assassination.
Yes.
That was an amazing story. And he didn't just talk about, going through the process of the investigation, which he did share some interesting facts that we don't know about as normal people who love history, who know Martin Luther King or think we know Martin Luther King. But he shared a lot of tidbits of that investigation, of the assassination.
Okay.
But again, it wasn't just the tidbits. He talked about how the investigation impacted him.
Oh.
Because he inadvertently saw a picture of Martin Luther King after he had been shot. Oh. And he said that image he has not been able to erase that image from his mind. So he talked about this investigation and the impact that it had on him as a person. And, eventually the ending, the solution to the problem. to the case.
Mm-hmm.
So that was it was amazing. It was an amazing story. We had a story of a woman who talked about being raised as a racist. Now, how brave is that?
How
To
very
come out
yes,
and
yes,
share that story.
yes.
But again, because of the culture of our society right now,
Mm-hmm.
she really wanted to come out and share her story, how she was raised in a small town in Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
to be a racist. But then, of course, as when she moved away from that area and mingled with other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
her attitude changed. And
Wow.
but she didn't have her first African American friend till she was 44 years old.
Isn't that amazing?
So that's amazing. So can you imagine the stories or the questions that
Yes.
you could have for her just sitting having that conversation with her and learning about her town and why she was raised this way and what changed her mind?
Even the thought of the courage it takes to
Yes.
say, I
Yes.
was and I am.
Yes. Yes.
And particularly, as you said, in today's climate.
Right.
And as we talk about the demographic of the Human Library Project there, I need to let this is my research, everybody, so, it may not be as thorough as it should be, but my research on the topic is that the whole Human Library Project started in Copenhagen in the year 2000. Now, here's what's so cool about this. It was started by 4 young people who were responding to the fact that one of their friends had been shot. And they wanted to do something. They wanted to talk about it. They were impacted to the extent that they convened around a festival. And the thing that's so exciting about that was Copenhagen. That was 2000. Now, this is all over the world.
All over the world. But we're the first ones to do it in Virginia.
Awesome.
We're the first ones to do it in Virginia. So, but yes, it's all over the world. They have a Facebook group.
Yes.
And recently they just had one in South Africa. Oh, I would have loved that.
Well, I read, this is from Australia. And what I was reading about now is they have several awards, Book of the Year and this kind of thing coming up. But some of the examples of books, what I did, I'll give you the topic, and then there's just a little paragraph of that person.
Sure.
One book title was HIV. And from the HIV book, some people think it's dangerous to be near or touch me. Some people avoid me just to avoid being confronted with the disease. I think nothing bad about them, but it's part of the reason why I kept it a secret for so many years. When people are afraid to get close to me, it hurts me more than the disease. Now, this one is called, the title of this book is Deaf Blind. And he says, I'm not angry about my situation. I don't even get angry when cab drivers refuse to pick me up because of my guide dog. But I think it important to give people a chance to understand what life looks like through my eyes.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah.
Next one, Bipolar is the name of the book. I do not view being bipolar as a challenge, but rather as a condition for my life. Periodically, I must take extra consideration for my health. For example, sleep is enormously essential for keeping my illness in check. If I don't sleep 8 to 10 hours every night, I will become ill.
Wow.
And some of the other things that young single mother, sexually abused, molested, homeless, autism. And I think what we need to do now is what I call them courageous conversations. With the landscape of our country now, we need to be encouraging courageous conversations. And I'm not talking about online. I'm talking about sitting down talking to somebody. It's hard to hate someone you're looking at and having a conversation.
Well,
right?
actually, our quote for this year was, it's hard to hate someone once you've learned their story.
Okay.
Yes, that was our
And
our
we didn't
quote
practice that,
We
gang.
didn't practice it.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
And it comes from a storyteller named Joel Ben Izzy.
Okay.
I heard him on a podcast, and I said, "Oh, I have to use that. I have to."
And it's
use
true.
that. And it's so true. Once you've learned, it's hard to hate someone once you've learned their story. You may come to a conversation with so many stereotypes about a person.
Yes.
But once you sit and have a conversation, you realize, wait a minute, they're human just like me.
The just like me part.
Yes.
Because no matter how foreign someone looks and speaks,
Mm-hmm.
as you communicate, you go, well, wait a minute, I felt that too one time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so then
Mm-hmm.
the gap.
The gap closes just a
Yes.
little bit, and you walk away with a better understanding of a culture.
Absolutely.
You know, you walk away feeling like, wow, I learned something today from some. Now I know why
Yes.
that particular culture does this, or
Yes.
why they say this, or why they, you walk away with a little bit. You grew a little
Absolutely.
bit. You grew a little
Absolutely.
bit. Yeah.
And my tagline on my website is know your why and live your worth.
Ooh.
And if we can begin to understand other people's why, then we can be encouraging
Right.
about them feeling worthy,
Right.
no matter what. Now, you told me that you had a focus group to evaluate this year's.
Yes.
Share what happened
So
there.
what we did last year, we made a documentary about it. It was our first time, so we chose a different books and we made a documentary about that.
Okay.
This year, we wanted to do something different. I wanted to gauge the response from the patrons, from the readers that came to the Human Library.
Okay.
And so what we did is we had a focus group with 2 books and 2 readers and 2 members of the committee. And we sat them down and they just had a conversation about their experience. And what we wanted to find out is if they felt that it made a difference, that people walked away from their story learning something new, or if it had an impact on them. And in one case, we had a young man from South Africa. He is visiting over here as a student for a year. And the funny thing is his government sent him over here.
Okay.
Because, as you know, South Africa is evolving,
Yes.
going through changes.
Yes.
But what they're discovering is the Black South Africans are having a hard time working and living with newcomers, with not just the white South Africans, but anybody else that's coming over there to work. So the president of that country wants the young people to learn how to work together. So he sent them out into the world in programs like this to come and meet people, to come and learn from other people. So it was perfect that we had this Human Library project.
Right.
So he volunteered to participate. And he said that one of the young ladies sat at his table, and she was Asian. And she actually said to him that she thought all the Black South Africans were criminals because of what she's seen on television.
Oh, my.
And he was taken aback by it. And he said, he rolled up his sleeves and he said, oh, no, I have to school this girl. I have to teach her that is a stereotype that's not true. And
how did he do that? I mean, what?
He just had a conversation with her about it. That's all. It was no need to get defensive
Right,
or no
right.
need to get upset. He just had a conversation with her. And she left having a better understanding that that is a stereotype and that she should dispel that, get rid of that stereotype from her mind.
And beyond getting rid of it, I think it's important to share it, say, with our tribe. You know, like, yeah, I talked to somebody today, and you know what? I figured out this isn't really what's going on.
Exactly.
That's what's going on.
Exactly.
And that way, Human Library replicates itself to the readers.
You share the book.
Yes.
You have a good book. How many times have you read a good story and you just couldn't wait to tell somebody about it?
I'm like that because I love to read. I really do.
You can't wait to share that story. So hopefully you're right. Hopefully they left.
Yeah.
Hopefully conversations were had outside of the Human Library. Next time they got together with coffee and they talked about it.
Yes. Well, give us another example in focus group.
So another example, we had a young lady whose father was involved in a murder-suicide.
Oh, dear.
And this young lady, she's was a white young lady. She turned to drugs and alcohol to deal with it. And her story was people didn't see her as a typical addict because she was a young white female.
Wow.
You know, a lot of people have different ideas of what a drug addict looks like.
Yeah.
And so that was her story. So she shared her journey through, being an addict and going through recovery and dealing with the fact that her father was a murderer And because people would ask her, why do you still have pictures of him? And why do you still love him? And she said, because he was my father.
Yes.
So, and her story she shared with us, which, we do have tissues on the table.
Yes, yes.
Because there are tears.
Yes.
But she shared that a young man came to her table and sat and heard her story, and then he left. But he came back and he said, I was going to go do drugs, but after I heard your story, I changed my mind. And she said she just turned around and she cried because she had no idea that her story was going to have that type of impact on people.
And Patricia, we don't.
We
don't know who's watching us.
No.
We don't know who's listening.
No.
And I have probably become very sensitive, maybe in the past 5 years, of the number of people that will come up to me. It seems like out of the blue. Tyra, when that happened to you, I watched how, and I'm like, really? Where were you? This kind of thing. And so our lives are constantly talking,
yes,
even when we're silent. So I'm so glad she was able to give that gift to the young man.
Yes. And she was so surprised. And that's the other thing. They share their story. It does take a lot of courage for them to come forward. Yes. But for many of them, it's a breakthrough. Yes. Like the woman I mentioned to you before that said I was born as a racist. And that was the name of her book. That was the title of her book. But it was a breakthrough for her. She didn't know how her students were going to react to her after she shared this story. She didn't know how her coworkers were going to treat her after hearing this story. But once it was over, she was just so relieved.
Yes.
So relieved that she was able to get rid of this burden that she had been carrying around. And she feels freer now. Freer now to continue on with her work and what she does. So,
we're talking about it because we're changing our paradigm. We're talking about people as books. But have any of these people written their stories?
No, none of them have written a story. We don't have any true authors right now, but we might. Well, I'm looking at one right now. Yeah, you have to come and be a book for us next year.
Now that I begin to understand the level of authenticity and vulnerability, and I will tell you, when I wrote my book, it was my memoir. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I gave more than I have ever given. And I can share this with you. I never thought of writing a book, ever. It was not on my radar. And when I would go speak to women's groups, they'd say, "Oh, Tyra, where can we buy your book?" And I don't have a book, And they kept asking, and I felt really exposed because I'm not trained. And my girlfriend said, "Ty, listen, what they want is more time with you. They want more of your story." And I said, "Okay, I'll try." Well, I did. I went through that experience. It was 13 months, and I said, somebody needs to read this that knows what they're doing in memoirs. And I sent it to a woman I researched, and she's in Denver, and she teaches memoir writing.
Oh, wow.
And I paid her to read it. And she phoned me up, and she said, "Well, Tyra, it's about 23,000 pages, 23,000 words too long." And then she said, "You use a lot of metaphors." And, I'm feeling rejection coming, And she said, "You do like to tell stories." And she said, "But you know what? I felt your spirit, and I'm going to teach you how to give your spirit life."
Oh, that's great.
So for the next, 4 months, all she did was ask me questions and gave me assignments. And that was the name of that. But after I finished, I called her and I said, her name was Patricia too. And I'm crying. Those cries, I don't know.
You had a breakthrough cry.
I did. The nasty ones. And I called and she says, "Ty, listen, you just gave birth to something and it's okay."
Wow.
But I say all that to say it took a lot of courage, but the kind of feedback I get is, wow, yeah. in there. And wow, thanks, Tyra.
Wow.
So this whole project, the people you've talked about, is so exciting.
It's very exciting, and we don't just put you out there. We do help people craft their story.
Good. Talk about that.
We have on our committee, we call them the book whisperers.
I like this. I like it.
And what we had 2 this year. Last year we only had 1 person. Poor guy. He was so
he was
out.
whispering.
He was so worn out. But what happens is a person applies to be a book.
Okay.
And the committee looks, and we look over the applications, and to see how authentic it is, and make sure we don't have 5 of one type of story,
right,
and not another type. And then the next step is we give the application to our book whisperers, and they call the person in, and they come in and have the conversation for 30 minutes to an hour to just talk to the person about their story, flesh it out, pinpoint an area, because you only have 20 minutes to share your story.
Right.
So it's good to know exactly what you're going to talk about. So that has been very helpful, very helpful. At times, the whisperer will say, I don't think this person is ready. And, I don't know, this story, is not good enough, or not necessarily not good enough, but the person just isn't prepared. Because, some of the stories are very, very deep, and some of them are very personal. We've had people pull out the day before because they just didn't have the courage. If something came over them and they weren't ready to share. And we understand that. And I totally understand. And we tell them, we have created a safe space for you to share your story.
Yes.
We make sure we have a member of the committee. That person's job is to walk around and make sure that everyone is comfortable. And we have we made some little bookmarks, and if you're uncomfortable, you raise the bookmark, and someone will come over and take the patron away. But we have not had to have any of that happen at all. Everyone has been very respectful. I think what it is, and if you look at some of the pictures, people are in awe. They're sitting there like this, with their hand on their chin.
I did see that. I did.
Just in awe of the stories.
Yes.
So we never had any of that, but we ensure the books that this is a safe place for you to have your conversation, and you share as much as you want. If it gets to be too much, then you stop. But we do have our book whisperers who go through every application and have a conversation with that person and help them come up with their story, come up with a book title, and then we schedule them when they're going to be able to be on. Now, we had a book last year. It was a young woman who was a Hurricane Katrina survivor. And she, to this day, really still struggles with that.
And I can imagine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a young woman. And, being displaced because her family left and had to come up here or move around the country.
Yes.
And, as a person who's never experienced that, I can't fathom that, just getting up and leaving everything behind. And so she really struggled with that. And so we were really concerned about her. But what happened, it was another young woman who also was a Hurricane Katrina survivor who came as a reader and sat at her table. And they both had a wonderful conversation. Now, she didn't know. She didn't know. They didn't know each other. They did not know each other at all. So that connection was made right there. So,
and I think it's more than that connection was made. I'm suspecting healing occurred.
Yes.
And one thing that I always say as frequently as I can, that life is a process. It is not an event. And the other thing that's part of my manifest is we are not our circumstances. Right. And the more we're talking now, I'm saying to myself, wow, what a way to teach the manifest through the stories, through the Human Library Project.
Yes.
That is so exciting. I'm going to probably need to take a break.
Okay.
And I will be back.
Okay.
We will be back. And we are back talking about the Human Library Project with Ms. Patricia Cooper, and we are delighted that you saw an idea and had a vision and you breathed life into it. Tell me this, as you brought this to life, What kind of challenges did you have?
Well, the biggest challenge was getting people to admit that they were the victim of some form of discrimination.
Interesting.
Yes, it was very hard. In fact, we considered changing our application, taking the language out of the application in order to get books, but we decided that we didn't want to do that, because that is what the Human Library project is all about. It's about having these conversations. But yeah, a lot of people, all races, they just did not want to admit that they were, they faced some type of discrimination, anything like that. So that was one of the hardest challenges. But once we got people talking and they shared a story, and we told them that's your story right there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not all the books are about discrimination or trauma or anything like that. We want to hear everybody's story.
Sure.
But the overall theme of the Human Library Project is to have a dialogue with people in the community. So that was one of our biggest challenges.
And I'm hearing a couple of things. One, the Human Library Project is a space of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And the one thing, and I love to read Brene Brown because she deals with vulnerability, and how she ties that to shame and guilt. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for us sometimes to see ourselves as survivors.
Yes.
Because we get confused and think what happened to us is us. Mm-hmm. So if I was an addict, I'm bad.
Right.
Because addiction is bad. No, you're a person who has an addiction who, by the way, has overcome it. Mm-hmm. So part of my goal in life is to help people change their language, because I think the tongue, the thoughts, as you speak, you are. Mm-hmm. And so I see, this is so much bigger than what we've described. Mm-hmm. If we really look at it. So, okay, it's 5 years from now. What does it look like to you?
Oh, my goodness.
Dream with me.
Dream. I just hope it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, it's already starting, because we started planning for next year this week. Okay. And that's something different. The first time we did it, we only had 2 months.
Okay.
And we were able to pull it together. Last year, we started a little earlier. But, yeah, it's getting bigger. And I would just like to see our attendance grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger.
What did you do with the documentary that you made?
The documentary aired on Nova TV, and it's on YouTube. Yep.
Okay, so maybe one of the goals would be to use that and expose more people to it.
And what I would like to do, so this year last year we did documentary. This year we kind of did the focus book group. Mm-hmm. Next year, I would like to build a bigger story around maybe one or two of the books, like really go back.
The bestsellers.
And not necessarily a bestseller, but just go back and maybe, videotape someone at home.
Oh, yes, I understand what you're saying. Their history, environment and everything.
Yeah, take it just dig a little bit deeper into one of our books or two of our books. So I'm always looking for ways to make it a little bit bigger.
You listen and I listen to NPR, and we listen to podcasts. Mm-hmm. There's a way that you can use what exists, because people are looking for content. And this is dynamic, and particularly today. And I listen to stories that come out on 1A, on Fresh Air, and this feels like something you might be able to shop.
Okay. And I was also thinking next year maybe we could bring the books in here and be on your show.
Well, you know what? I'm always and the irony is I'm about to start, we change our theme every month. Mm-hmm. In April, I'm about to start a series called Courageous Conversations.
Oh, wow.
So we'll talk about that.
Yes,
because you have the books, you have the content, and I have the need.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Definitely.
And there's something else you need to do now. Patricia's smiling at me because I ask every one of my guests to write and read a letter to his or her younger self. And on occasion they call and go, "What? I don't want to do that." And and Patricia was one of those, but she agreed. And I want you to do that for me now, would you?
I will.
Okay,
I will.
thank you.
So this letter is to me, maybe in 10th grade.
Okay,
All right. And I'm just going to call it Dear P.
okay.
Dear P. Remember when you used to ride the school bus through the wealthy neighborhoods and daydream about living in one of those houses? That was a big dream for you because you lived in the housing project on the south side of town. You were happy living in the housing project called South Terrace. You and your motley crew of friends, black, white, and Puerto Ricans, had fun. You were all equals. You were on the same page. It wasn't until you were bused to the predominantly white high school that you realized that things were different on the other side of town. There was life outside of your hood. It was that time that I developed a determination and desire to grab a hold of the American dream. That would take a lot of courage. You were the first one in your family to go away to college and the first one to move away from home. Having decided to stay and work in Washington, D.C. after attended Howard University. There were plenty of times when you would stop and ask yourself, what am I doing here? You always had a strong sense of faith, and your mother taught you how to pray and believe. That faith will get you through many what am I doing here moments, so don't ever stop believing. There will be plenty of good times and not so good times, but with determination and the desire to succeed, you will prevail. You will marry your soulmate, and together you will raise two beautiful daughters who will grow into independent young women who are chasing their own version of the American dream. And you will help them just as you have helped countless others by being a teacher, a co-worker, a sister, an auntie, and a friend. Well, you have sort of achieved the American dream. You now live in a beautiful home with so many rooms that you don't even need. You live in a community where you once again are having fun and enjoying life. And I say sort of because at 56, the dream of getting a house has been replaced by many other dreams, including getting a master's degree and pursuing your love of making documentary movies.
Oh, Patricia, thank you so much. Everybody, listen, we're going to hear more about the Human Library Project, and you'll hear more from Patricia. I want to leave you. I usually do a spiritual doggy bag for those days when you're going, oh, I'm so tired of being tired of what? Okay, well, I just want to remind you, when you have that day, that you are amazing. You are stronger than you feel, smarter than you know, worthier than you believe, and more loved than you can ever imagine. I want you to continue to be the you that you can admire. Within each of us lies our best self, the sum of our finest characteristics. Our best self provides the template, the ideal model. It is the best guide to empowerment, for nobody really knows us better than ourselves. I want to thank you for listening in. This has been awesome. Please, your seat is guaranteed at the table. Come on back next Saturday. And if you have a competing priority, Saturday nights are not necessarily for just sitting around the radio. You can catch our podcast on YouTube at Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. I'm going to leave you now with the piano version of our theme song.